Hi, I'm Marcy Hill, and today on What Matters to Miss Marcy, I am talking to Mr. Darrell Hill, a very cool guy, but no relation, and he is the founder and CEO of Eternity Gardens. Darrell,
Hi,
how are you
Marcy. How are you?
today?
I'm doing well, thanks. And you?
I am fantastic. And I wanted to talk to you today because when we first met, you told me, well, you were trying to give me a background about Eternity Gardens, and I got it, but I didn't fully get it. So could you tell us more about Eternity Gardens?
Sure. And I'd be happy to. It's interesting. I guess it's we met at the Cranes event, right? At a Cranes breakfast.
Yes, and there
Right.
was
I mean,
it
at this
was
point, it's
with the
Cranes Small
Shark Tank,
Business.
yeah, the Shark Tank mogul on there.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Just it's amazing to believe it goes back. I guess. Well, I guess 2 years now. So what we are is we're an online platform. And we connect families that have either chosen cremation or that have cremated remains with cemeteries or scattering service providers where they can lay those cremated remains to rest. And so, my on my grandmother's side of the family, she migrated up from Tennessee.
Okay.
Um, and so, if my grandmother were to choose to be cremated, and we decided as a family that she wanted to have her remains buried back in Tennessee, you could go to my website, eternitygardens.com. You could choose the state of Tennessee, and then any number of different cemeteries or scattering service providers would pop up. You could sort of find one that was near Memphis, where my grandmother's from, and you say, "Oh, well, here's the Memphis Memorial Cemetery, and they have a wonderful set of options where you can bury cremated remains. Let's look into that one for grandma." So you can actually sort of connect directly with the cemetery. And then once that connection is made, that's when I've done my job. I'm providing a platform where families can very easily find cemeteries anywhere in the United States, and then sort of create a relationship with those cemeteries to sort of see about purchasing, the burial right for cremated remains.
And how did you come up with that idea? Because it's unique. It's a unique concept.
Yeah, so quite honestly, I had coffee with my parents one day. I'd dropped my boys off at baseball practice. It was a Saturday. Went to stop by and say hi to them, have a cup of coffee. My mother said, my parents had been in the process of making their final arrangements. And my mother shared with me that she and my father decided that they wanted to be cremated. Now, they're in reasonably good health now. Um, but when I asked my mother, I said, "Well, what do you want, my brother and sister and I to do with your cremated remains?" And she said, "Oh, well, just go scatter our ashes somewhere pretty." And so when I went online, I did like most people would do. I went to Google, went online to try and find, well, what do you do with cremated remains? Where can you bury them? Where can you scatter them? There was no easy way to sort of find that information. And so in trying to sort of answer the question for my mother, I also became aware of the fact that the baby boom generation is choosing cremation more and more. The fact that we as a nation have a better than 50% cremation rate. So the cremation rate in the United States is just north of 51%. And so now the market in the United States is a market where there's a majority of cremation. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm not the only one who's going to have to sort of figure this out for their parents. And so, long story short, trying to figure that out for my mom and dad, combined with understanding the larger set of population factors that exist in the United States, I said, oh, well, there's an opportunity here. So that's how I got the idea, and built the platform in 2016 and 2017, launched it in 2017. And so we've been up and running for just over a year now.
And during the course of your research, did you find out why people are choosing cremation over burial?
Yes. So the not I won't call it the most significant factor, but the largest factor at this point is probably cost. Cremation is, if the average sort of burial event is anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000, you can be created for as little as $3,000 and sometimes less than that.
Really?
So a lot of people choose it because it is a less expensive option. Having said that, there are a significant number of people that all also sort of think it is a better way environmentally when it comes to where you lay to rest someone's body. If you think about sort of population trends, if you think about the amount of concrete and the amount of metal and the amount of steel that sort of goes into the ground when someone is buried, for someone to choose cremation is actually a more eco-friendly sort of disposition. And so I view it as really a combination of certainly cost factors, but also the fact that people just think that it is a better choice for the environment. And quite honestly, a lot of people just, why do I want to sort of take up that much space in a cemetery? It really just sort of boils down to people's personal preference also.
So people, I mean, I understand people do give thought to their afterlife, or I don't know the correct term. However, they really give thought to how much space that being taken during their burial.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think I wouldn't put it like that. I think generally speaking, excuse me, people have a sense of, do they go and visit cemeteries where their family members are buried? And the answer is probably not. And so they think, well, if that's not a practice that I undertake, I'm not going to expect someone to go to a cemetery to dust off my grave and do things like that. And so I think they're sort of projecting onto the future their own habits. And so when you sort of think about the fact that, I don't go to the cemetery, or maybe their loved ones are buried miles and miles away because of the mobility of Americans. And so I think when people sort of think about just does it really make sense to have my body go into a casket, have my casket go into a concrete vault, have the concrete vault go into a ground, have a metal sort of headstone sort of laid on top of that, at a tremendous expense, when no one's really going to visit me. I don't have family. I'm going to be buried where I live now, not where I grow up. And so I think there are a number of other, there are a number of factors where people say, just cremate me, put me in an urn, or scatter my ashes somewhere. So I think that's more the rationale behind it.
So when people request to have their ashes scattered, do you have an idea of what's behind their request versus just sitting up in an urn? I was about to say chilling in an urn, but that's not.
Yeah,
That's a good way to describe it. But,
well, I think that in popular culture there is that's kind of almost sort of the de facto way of sort of thinking about it. So Volkswagen, the car manufacturer, they actually had an advertisement where they showed a family of three generations that took the remains of the grandfather who had passed, sort of took him on a cross country road trip, and then you see them at what is probably the eastern or the western shore of the United States, sort of scattering ashes. If you think about The Big Lebowski, all right, and so there are these sort of iconic scenes in movies where people die, they've been cremated, and sort of people sort of scatter their ashes. And so I think that popular culture has the idea that, oh, well, if you get cremated, you can actually go and you can just go and scatter the ashes. I think what a lot of people don't know is the fact that cemeteries, and more cemeteries, actually have spaces where you can, take an urn and you can sort of place it in what's called a niche, or you can actually sort of bury an urn in the same way that you bury a coffin. So, I think, us folks in the sort of death care profession are trying to change the narrative around scattering. There's certainly nothing wrong with scattering if that's what someone wants to do, but there are other options available, and there are other options available that allow for, the placement of a headstone that sort of, serves as a permanent marker that says, here is where, Jane Doe lies. This was the year she was born. This is the day, year she died. And to a certain degree, for certain families, that gives them a certain measure of comfort. So, it's romantic, the idea of scattering, but there are so many other options available for people, and for families that choose cremation.
and I'm with you that there are a lot of people that don't know that there is a space in the cemetery for urns. And could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I, for one, was not aware.
Oh, sure. So, and so I think your understanding is probably what, 70, 80, 85% of people understand. So when you think about a cemetery, you think about body in a casket in the ground. Well, you can actually, so someone can still be cremated, and they can actually, they can be buried in the same way that that a person in a coffin would be buried. But there are other options in addition. So if you ever sort of go inside a cemetery and you go inside the mausoleum, you will find areas where they have placed the coffins, but they'll also have areas that, they're probably no bigger than your computer screen, and it's called a niche, Niche, and it's almost like a bookcase. And so you literally sort of, I'll use my cup of coffee here. You sort of take the urn, all right, and just kind of place it on the bookshelf. And in some cemeteries, you can have sort of pictures around it, so you can have pictures of the family and pictures of the loved ones. If they were a baseball, a big fan of baseball, you could have, New York Yankees cap. If they were a golfer, you could place golf balls, and so you can really, really sort of personalize it, and that becomes their final resting place. And so it's not in the ground, as with a coffin bearer, and it's not sort of scattered at sea or scattered over mountains or scattered anywhere. That is their permanent resting place, and you still get a little, you might get a bronze plaque that has the name and the year of birth and the year of death. There's so many other sort of ways, not a way, but there are just other ways that cemeteries have where you can actually place an urn. And quite honestly, there's more flexibility. I mean, you think about the size and weight of a casket. There's only one thing that you can do. You can either sort of go in the mausoleum or it can go in the ground. But cemeteries are getting more and more creative with where they can, what they can do with just imagine this is an urn, and what they can do with the urns and where they can place them. And again, that becomes that person's final resting place. On the anniversary of their birth, the family can sort of go there to pay their respects. On Mother's Day or Father's Day, the family can sort of go there to pay respects. And so the idea of having a permanent resting place for a loved one, I think, sort of speaks to just kind of family and familial traditions that that families really want to be able to participate in.
And how do you find the cemeteries and things to partner with to spread the word about Eternity Garden?
Yeah, so I have really sort of a two-sided market, right? So the cemeteries, they're really my clients, right? So they pay to sort of list on my site, and then once I send them leads, they pay me on a per lead basis. And quite honestly, it's going to industry shows. So at the end of this month, I'm going to Albany, New York, for the New York State Cemetery Association event. It is, I'm doing a lot of thought leadership articles on LinkedIn and with other trade publications. It's really sort of it's a hard target search. I'm going to a number of different sort of industry events as well, where I'm either speaking at panels or we're serving as a sponsor, or I'm just there, literally, hi, how are you? Marcy, my name's Darrell Hill. I'm CEO of Eternity Gardens. This is sort of what we do. And so, those are the kind of ways. It's your traditional sort of business development exercise.
And then you said you had two. What was your other side? So you had the cemeteries.
Oh, right. Exactly. So there's the two-sided market. So the clients are the cemeteries, and then they're the users, right? And so there's folks like me trying to figure out what to do with my parents, hopefully later rather than sooner. And so the consumers, the families, get to use the service for free. So there's no cost for them. And so with them, I market with Google Ads. I market with Facebook. There are a number of events coming up, or actually, in existence now. And so, Eternity Gardens, me and my company, will have a presence there where we are getting the word out about our product and services.
Have you ever written an article for AARP?
So I have not written an article for AARP. The articles that I write, I will post on LinkedIn. I will actually sort of post them on my own website. But no, actually, I have not written an article for AARP. That's a good idea, though. I probably should.
That is something to consider. And then that's all I have right now as far as.
Oh, sure, no problem.
But another thing too, if they have a couple of family reunion magazines. I don't know what they are, but consider publishing in those too.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. No, that's a good idea. Thank you.
And I would like to wind down or start wrapping up our interview. But did you have anything else you want to add about Eternity Gardens, about the services you provide, or how clients can interact with Eternity Gardens?
Sure. So the website is www.eternitygardens.com. We actually have a presence on Facebook. So if you look up eternitygardens.com on Facebook, feel free to sort of take a look at the article that we posted, and feel free to like our page. And also, quite honestly, in addition to human remains, we also service pets. So a number of cemeteries, depending on which state they're in, a number of cemeteries actually can inter or can bury pet remains separately, or they can bury sort of pet remains along with the owner. And so for people that have the cremated remains of their pets and they're looking to find a place to lay those remains to rest at a certain point in time, they can also look at our website to find a cemetery or a scattering service provider near them that will take the remains of their pets. And so, we are, over the course of time, trying to be a full service provider, really the site when it comes to what can I do with cremated remains? Where can I lay them to rest? Where can I find their find a resting place for them? We want to be that site.
I'm sorry, I had a fog.
Oh,
Okay.
no problem.
For Eternity Gardens, is it garden or is there S at the end? Because I wasn't sure if I was saying it correctly throughout the interview. So I want to make sure it's correct.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clarification. So it's Eternity Gardens, plural. So www.eternitygardens.com.
Okay, thank you for your time, Darrell.
Oh, well, thank you for the interview. I appreciate it.
Okay, and I forgot what I was about to say. I'm going to delete this part. Well, that concludes this session of What Matters to Miss Marcy, and I will catch you all next time.
Thanks again, Marcy. Bye-bye.